My only goal is to get proof of work to a point where regular people can participate with a computer out of their home. And if we can do that, then I think we would actually have solved the fair launch problem, because it means that anyone with a computer can press a button, can burn some energy doing computation. They hurt their battery life, but they get this token. That's the sacrifice they're making.
This episode is sponsored by MyPrize, which is the first multiplayer casino where you can watch, chat, and play together with your friends. Use the referral code Lightspeed when signing up to receive a 150% deposit bonus for up to $300. We'll hear more from MyPrize later in the episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lightspeed. I'm your host, Jack Kubanek, and we have the honor, the privilege today to have Hardhat Chad, the man who broke Solana, joining the pod today. Hardhat Chad is anonymous, so he's going to have his camera off today because we respect that here on the Lightspeed pod. But Hardhat Chad, thanks for joining Lightspeed.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jack. It's great to be here.
Super excited to dive into it. I'm just going to give a brief overview for listeners just to set some background. So Hardhat Chad is the developer behind OR, which is this proof of work experimental kind of currency that's built on top of Solana. So it was originally founded in April as part of a hackathon. And pretty soon after that, Solana starts having these pretty major congestion issues. A lot of transactions are not reaching the blockchain. It was very frustrating from like a user perspective. And so around 2 weeks after launching Hardhat Chad paused mining and began developing OR v2, which was meant to be more efficient. Solana developers as well kind of instituted some changes in the interim to try to make the network more able to handle periods of high usage. And on August 5th, which we're recording this on Monday, so that's about a week ago on the dot, OR resumed mining. And so far, it looks like there's a bit of a higher success rate. Around 9% of Solana block space is OR transactions. Just based on a Dune dashboard I was looking at today, there's around 5,300 holders of OR v2 tokens. I guess, Hardhat Chad, where I want to start, if you had to give yourself a letter grade for the OR v2 launch and how it's gone after all the development over the past few months, what would you give yourself?
A letter grade. I'm never fully satisfied. I'd probably go with like a B plus or something.
A B plus. Okay.
Yeah, I think the launch has gone about as smoothly as it could have, and there's issues with every product launch, and so there have been a few things here and there, and like the web app and the CLI and RPC connections and stuff that we've been firefighting on for the past week. But overall, the main goal with V2 was that everyone who's mining and running a miner should be able to land hashes and earn the token. And from what I can tell, and I'm seeing in the data, that's what's happening. Everyone who is running the miner is able to land hashes and earn the token, and that's quite key to kind of our long-term mission of basically solving this fair launch problem. So
I was mining OR the first few days it came out. I've been traveling the past couple of days, so I've fallen behind. The balances are low, but it appeared to me that throughout those first few days, you were continuously kind of tweaking and making upgrades to OR v2, because I would, go on and there'd be a new upgrade and there were priority fees that were dynamic instead of having to put in a set number and all these things. And I looked on GitHub and it looks to me like since mining resumed a week ago, you already put out 8 additional tweaks to the OR v2 code. So I just want to get kind of the inside scoop. What's that been like shipping all of these updates in the first week?
Yeah, I mean, I guess clarify, all those changes are on the client side. So like the CLI or web app clients that are submitting the transactions, as opposed to, we haven't made any changes yet to the contract, other than just the one like enable mining. So there haven't been any changes to the contract from what was on DevNet. But yeah, there was a few issues on the client side in terms of just like if an RPC request times out, does the client handle that well? Does it handle it gracefully and move on or retry, or does it just panic and crash? And so there's like a lot of those little just like error handling issues in the CLI. And then the other thing that has kind of been top of mind for a lot of people are the fees, the transaction fees that they're paying. That ends up kind of being one of the larger costs of mining. And so one of the biggest features we've rolled out just over the past week was a dynamic priority fee feature to both the web app and the CLI, such that those clients will basically look at what the current market rate priority fee is for landing a transaction, and set your priority fee automatically to that. And that helps kind of dramatically like reduce the cost basis for miners. And so it's just kind of been adding support for all the different RPCs that support that endpoint, as well as kind of a fallback solution for people who are running with RPCs that don't. And and then other just like quality of life things around like the CLI usage, trying to clean up some of the instructions and UX.
And so who's shipping these updates? Because I know you were the founder of Or, but it looks like other people are contributing. So what's the process like to contribute, and who have those people been that are working on this with you?
Yeah, full time. There's myself and one other guy, and so we are maintaining the software full time. And I'd say I've been like very pleased by the contributions from the community in the last week. The community has put forward at least a dozen PRs or so far that I've had the chance to review and merge in, and everything from like retries to the priority fee logic for certain RPCs, some error handling situations, adding extra logs and such. Basically, I mean, the community is forked the CLI and made a bunch of modifications, and then we've been trying to do our best to get the community to contribute those changes back up to the main official build, so that we can get them distributed out to as many people as possible.
Interesting. Yeah. So with that sort of kind of status update, I want to dive into the origin story, if you will. The very beginning. Where did the idea to do a proof of work project on Solana come from, and how did you get plugged into the Coliseum hackathon? And then maybe speak a little bit about that crazy couple of weeks in April as well.
Sure. Yeah. The seed of the idea came from a conversation I was having with some friends, where we were actually spending a long time looking at Bitcoin bridges and Bitcoin L2s, and how to get as much Bitcoin as possible onto Solana. And the longer that kind of spent looking at that technology and what it would take to bridge Bitcoin off of the main L1 chain into a faster L2 system like Solana, I just became kind of frustrated, I guess, with those solutions. I wasn't convinced that was like the right long-term solution for the industry, that like, I don't know, a multi-trillion-dollar crypto industry was going to be built off of, for a number of reasons, but it's not worth really diving into the details too much, because eventually we just kind of like got to the point where we were joking like, well, we could rewrite Bitcoin as a smart contract and deploy that on Solana, and that would get us quote unquote Bitcoin on Solana. And it was just a joke initially, and it kind of sat in the back of my mind for a number of months, probably 6-7 months or so, and then around January earlier this year, I started thinking about that like a lot more seriously, and realized it was possible. Kind of started dabbling around, just for fun at first, to see how large the build would be, and realized pretty quickly on that proof of work on Bitcoin has two major responsibilities. One is it provides consensus for the network, And then the second is it's responsible for distributing new Bitcoin tokens to miners. And when I started kind of writing the smart contract and playing around with these ideas of like proof of work on Solana, I realized that Solana was actually solving consensus. Like Solana as a proof of stake network provides consensus for the smart contract, which actually freed me to do a lot more creative, flexible things with the proof of work layer. So I didn't need to worry about consensus. I could focus only on distributing tokens. And that was where I think the main insight came, or where the mission kind of formed, was realizing that we had a chance to potentially offer a new solution to this like fair launch problem that has kind of been, I don't know, a running challenge for the industry since inception, of how do you actually distribute a token fairly to as many people as possible. And
Chad, let me interject there, because
sure,
I think if we had like a hardcore Bitcoiner on the podcast right now, they'd listen to that and they'd say, okay, there's the distribution, the consensus side of proof of work, and what makes Bitcoin valuable is that it does both. And so your tokens are being used to contribute to the consensus for this network, and or doesn't do that. So not to jump the gun a little bit on this question, but I think it's apropos to ask it here. What makes OR valuable then if it doesn't contribute to any sort of consensus mechanism?
Well, I wouldn't say it doesn't, but I mean, what makes OR valuable is just the confluence of supply and demand.
Why is it that it does contribute to consensus?
It doesn't contribute directly to Solana consensus, but what it is doing right now is it's driving demand for block space. And I think as you mentioned earlier, like taking up around 9-10% of compute units on every Solana block to verify these hashes. I think that was up to like 30% at one point. And it's a function of how many unique miners are active at any given one time. Is kind of what sets how many hashes we need to validate in a given block, and then how many CUs are being taken up. And so, driving demand for Solana block space leads to higher fees for all those validators, and then obviously helps make it slightly more profitable, or increases the revenue of those validator operators. So I wouldn't, I guess, go so far as to say OR is like a consensus protocol, because it's definitely not. But it is definitely driving economic demand for Solana block space, which I think benefits everyone on the chain. And then the other thing that OR is doing at the moment is kind of attracting a cohort of people that were kind of crypto adjacent but not active in crypto. And this OR mining game has kind of caught their attention and pulled them in, and sort of is, from what I've seen, forming a new generation of crypto users. And I think that's really exciting.
So I'm hearing, like, one, to the extent that Solana block space is valuable or represents sort of a claim on that, and then B, to the extent that this game is fun and more people are playing it, you're getting tokens that are kind of the native token of this proof of work game a little bit. Okay? So I cut you off. I apologize. You were saying that you had reached this insight of what proof of work on Solana could look like, and that was sort of the idea. So then what was the kind of actual, going to the hackathon and building this thing like?
Yeah. I mean, it was basically just 3 months of grinding away on the V1 contract, and then just launching it right as the Coliseum submissions started opening up. And I was very surprised by the reception that the V1 launch had. In the back of my mind, I told like a few friends and advisors and such what I was working on, but I didn't know how it was going to be received by by the public, and so I thought like there was some potential there that the launch would flop, and it definitely didn't flop, and there was so much demand for the token, so many transactions being submitted to the chain that like aggravated and exposed this bug in the Solana networking layer. And I think that kind of created this like feedback loop, this marketing feedback loop where like people had trouble using Solana the blockchain, and it was like, well, why is Solana so slow? And people would mention ore, and then people would start looking into ore, and then more people would mine, which would make it slower. It was like kind of this looping issue. And it eventually reached the point where I like pausing mining just made sense from the standpoint that we weren't achieving the mission of fair launch and like fair distribution, because there were only a few people that were really able to land transactions on Solana at that time, and they tended to be definitely your more sophisticated miners. And the fact that other people were not even able to land transactions I saw it as like an existential issue. So that ultimately was why decided to pause mining and start working on the V2.
MyPrize is the first multiplayer casino where you can watch, chat, and play together with your friends. With over 500 games ranging from slots to live table games to the latest online casino favorites, there's something for everyone. Crypto is at the core of MyPrize, so you can play it anytime, anywhere. Get your friends, hop into your favorite creator's room, and see why winning is better together. Use the referral code Lightspeed when signing up to receive a 150% deposit bonus up to $300. Thanks again to MyPrize for sponsoring today's episode. And so going into the V2 then, I know you created a new hash function called DrillX, I believe, that was initially developed for Tor's Onion browser. And from what you've told me, this is meant to make it easier for someone mining on a phone to compete with someone with an ASIC or something like that. Without going too much into the weeds, can you walk me through what's different between OR1 or V1 and V2, especially with regards to this hash function?
Yeah, for sure. A few of the just smaller changes before diving real deep into the hash function are we added a supply cap to the V2 program. So the V1, when it was originally implemented, I froze the contract before launch and had not implemented any sort of cap on the overall supply. So OR was just designed to mint 1 per minute forever. And there's a lot of feedback from the community. People wanted stronger guarantees around inflation protection or dilution protection, I guess I should say. And so we implemented a supply cap of 21 million tokens, just kind of borrowing the total max supply of Bitcoin. And then there are a few other changes regarding the actual reward payout and how that's calculated. And the rough way that it works is a miner will mine for a minute, around like 55 seconds or so, and then submit the most difficult hash that they've found in that minute. And difficulty here is kind of a technical term referring to how many zeros are on the leading part of the hash. So if you look at the hash as a number, it's just how many zeros does it start with? And the more zeros you have, the more rewards you'll receive for that hash. And every bit of difficulty is twice as hard to find, effectively. It's the easy way to think about it. But yeah, getting to the hash function, I think the hash function is probably the most important change in the V2 contract, because its dynamics, like it will set up a fundamentally different system than Bitcoin mining. And the reason why is just that the hash function DrillX is not very parallelizable. So it doesn't lend itself very well to GPUs or to ASICs. You can write, and people have rewritten DrillX to run on GPUs, but the performance is not like many orders of magnitude faster, as it is with SHA-256 on Bitcoin.
So as an aside, the not being parallelizable means essentially I can't link together a bunch of ASICs and like greatly increase my hash power. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, you could increase it a little bit, but not like 6 orders of magnitude,
Mhm.
which is kind of is the case with SHA-256. This is why um, like cloud compute and AWS and GCP have never been that big with regards to Bitcoin mining, because it's just not the most efficient way to do it. It's not cost effective. You really need like an ASIC, a computer specially built to do SHA-256 hashes in order to get to the lowest cost basis for mining Bitcoin. With DrillX, the hash function is far more CPU friendly. It's far harder to parallelize in that sense, and so that lends itself more to like commodity computers, whether it be um, phones or laptops or like EC2 instances in AWS, just like general commodity compute. And so I think this will end up having a very different kind of long-term outcome here. One is just we want to be able to allow anyone on like any device, ideally, a phone or a laptop, to start mining, like burn some energy, burn your battery life on your phone, and you should be able to earn the token. Um, and the protocol guarantees that you can earn the token, and that's kind of the key guarantee, is that mining is far more accessible to everyone. Where with Bitcoin, on the other hand, what I saw as problematic is like there's no guarantee that you're going to earn a block, and in fact, if you're not at like the very top of the game and like highly competitive, you might not earn any rewards at all. So it kind of hurts the supply distribution, in my opinion. I think it's kind of objective, just like in the numbers. But yeah, I mean, so with regards, I see it as like important that we can get tokens into the hands of as many people as possible, and using a hash function that is CPU friendly, that can allow someone with a laptop or a phone to mine, is quite key to that. And what we need to work on now is basically making sure that those transaction fees on Solana are not too high or cost prohibitive to those miners on smaller devices.
Yeah. So I guess real quick as well, just on that idea of the mining difficulties. So to my understanding, I mean, like at least mining through the terminal on my MacBook, I'll hit mine, and then every 60 seconds it shoots out a hash, and it says the difficulty is X, and it's a number between 5 and like 40 or something. I've never gotten that high, but I've seen it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like what's driving the different numbers you get? Because I think on the user side, it's actually, I said on the roundup, it sort of is like a casino, like pull the lever on the slots machine or whatever effect, because it's like, oh, what difficulty am I going to get? How much of the ore am I going to get this minute?
Mm-hmm.
But what actually drives the different difficulty that you get every minute?
Your hash power, basically. So yeah, I guess to try to explain it, every bit of difficulty is twice as hard to find. And so what the miner is doing is essentially generating random numbers. And your odds of finding a rare random number are, it's harder to find a rare random number than a less rare random number. And rarity here is that difficulty measure. So the more leading zeros you have on that hash that you generate, the more rare it is. And so the more, it's really like a shots on goal kind of thing. Like if you can take many shots on goal in a minute, you're more likely to find one of those higher difficulty hashes than if you're only taking like 100 shots on goal. And that is just, that's hash power. So if you have many cores and you're coordinating lots of machines together, you're going to get more shots on goal, and your odds of finding a higher difficulty hash are much greater. If you're running on a 4-core or a 2-core mobile phone, you're just taking fewer shots on goal during that minute. You're getting through fewer numbers, so your odds of finding a higher difficulty hash are lower. The key with the contract is we still are able to guarantee that even those smaller devices like the phones are able to land a hash. They can still submit something and get the token, which is kind of key. That's the one defining feature I think that OR has that no prior proof of work token had before it, is that at a contract level, we're guaranteeing that if you submit the hash of a sufficient difficulty, you will earn some of the token. And yeah, that's quite key to like the longer tail participation of users.
But something I have seen you talk about is that building a web browser that can mine ore, and also I guess now a phone browser through the Backpack app, is quite difficult. And there's obstacles such as your mining difficulty can be throttled by the browser and things like that. And because of this, you've proposed building mining pools akin to like the mining pools that exist on Bitcoin today. So maybe just walk through the thinking that led you to realize you need mining pools, and what's the development pathway going to look like for that?
Yeah. It all just comes down to like the math of the costs and how much ore is being earned per hash. And so if you have less hash power, if you have a smaller device, you're going to be finding lower difficulty hashes and therefore earning less ore. And the transaction fees that you're paying to submit those hashes and earn that ore on a SOL denominated basis can be higher than the ore you're actually earning, to the point where it's like, if you're trying to get ore, you might actually just be better off from a SOL like cost basis, like buying on the open markets, than paying a transaction fee with a large priority fee to mine. And I mean that's okay, but we really would like to like open up the game to as many users as possible, and so ultimately that means like, what can we do to lower the cost basis of landing a hash? And I think there are only like a few options to really doing that, and the one that makes the most sense is a pool, which in essence the whole idea behind a pool is that a lot of small miners with like lower hash power devices can get together, can unionize their hash power, and like unionize their stake, and coordinate off chain to find the best hash, their best collective hash, and submit that together as one kind of group, such that as a group they're only submitting one transaction as opposed to hundreds or thousands of transactions. And that allows the group to lower their individual cost basis of each individual miner. Because if I'm a participant in a pool, I actually don't need to pay a transaction fee to submit my hash. I just have to submit my hash to the pool operator. And the pool operator does the work of looking through all the hashes that were submitted by the pool participants and selecting the one with the highest difficulty and then submitting that to the chain.
So your cost would be lower, but you'd presumably like mine ore more slowly as well, right? So you would make less money essentially at the same time that you're having to spend less on land ports.
Well, it depends on, I mean, your individual payout from the pool would be proportional to your hash power share of the pool. So if you're like half the hash power in the pool, you would be earning on average about half of the rewards of that pool. If you're 1% of the pool, then 1% of the rewards. The thing is, if the pool is very large, it can potentially like rival some of these like very large miners with lots of hash power that are coordinating hundreds or even thousands of nodes. Because if you get hundreds or even thousands of participants in the pool, then you start to look like a large miner, and you're sharing rewards with all of the participants in the pool, but you also it looks like, based on our current models, like you should also be able to share stake effectively. And so, if you can pool together a large amount of stake and pull together a large amount of hash power, then as a group, it could actually be the pool could be a significant force.
So there's the rationale behind pools. What's the timeline to developing them? Is this like an imminent thing, or is this a months down the line kind of initiative? What is the timeline looking like right now?
Yeah, I have a contract like 80% written. There's like a contract to coordinate all this stuff in a way that like minimizes uh, or like prevents the pool operator from conducting certain types of fraud. So, for example, like we can write this contract to prevent the pool operator from lying about the overall hash power that was like contributed in a given batch, and there's some like concepts we're borrowing from like L2 developments, like fraud proofs and stuff like that. But to be clear, like the pool is not an L2. It's, I mean, you could maybe think of it as like an L2 without a bridge, an L2 without a token, an L2 without, I don't know, like an absurd amount of funding. Like it's just a contract that like helps the pool participants lower their participation fees, lower the cost basis. And so you're coordinating some off chain. The pool operator is validating his hashes off chain, then is writing a proof to the chain with the best hash, and then that proof is validated to allow all the pool participants to claim their rewards. So it looks a little bit like an L2, but it's not quite an L2 in a traditional sense.
Not an L2, and you're not going to raise $100 million. So look, so speaking of fees, or the asset in the past week has declined around 80% in value. This was something that you probably could have predicted happening. Sort of, if you look at the price chart, you can see where mining was paused and ore technically became scarce. The price spiked a bunch, ore resumes, a bunch of new ore supplies being created, and the price has gone down a lot. And just in, people that are mining ore that I've talked to, one complaint that I'm hearing is there's no incentive to hold this thing rather than just mine the ore and then instantly dump it. And so there's just a ton of downward pressure on the price. And so I wanted to ask a little bit about the price action and like, do you see a pathway to creating a supply demand dynamic where people want to hold ore and not just mine it and then immediately sell?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of things we're kind of working on there. I don't want to reveal like too much, but I mean the one mechanic we added to the V2, I guess to get back to your question about what's different with V2, is we added a staking mechanic to the V2 contract that allows miners to stake the ore that they've mined, and for that stake they get a multiplier on their mining rewards. And so this has like a pretty, it changes the calculus of, especially of the larger miners, because the rewards curve is compounding in some ways, not is super linear. Meaning, if you hold ore, you're actually going to earn more ore over time than if you sell right away. And this, from the conversations I've had, it seems to have changed the calculus of a number of the larger miners and the way that they're kind of approaching like their token positions. But that's just like the structural incentive in the contract that is not, there's a lot more we can do outside of the contract. And the few things that we're kind of looking at there, one is a game that I've like developed. About 90% of it's written. It needs a front end. I'm kind of looking for a developer who can kind of take it across the finish line, because I just have like a lot on my plate right now. But if we find the right developer to kind of finish it, this game is designed to attract a lot of the like MEV bots. It's like a highly bottable game that I think people eventually will write like probably machine learning algorithms for. because it's like a territory control game that we call checkers. Kind of a
Oh,
um,
I'm stupid. That took me like way too long to. Okay, cool.
yeah, yeah, we call it checkers. I don't want to reveal too much about the mechanics, but essentially it's a territory control game where like a player has control of a territory on the board. Every move you make contributes. You have to pay some amount of ore into the game pool, and then the winner of the game uh, will earn half of the game pool, and the other half is distributed to the players based on their territory that they control at the end. Uh, and then there's a few other kind of mechanics that make the game like I think will be really interesting and like probably highly bottable, but intentionally so. Um, yeah,
Interesting.
and that I think like I mean, if the pool size gets large enough, I think participants will definitely be incentivized to play at least, and then you obviously you need to pay or into the pool to play. So I think that in other games like that, I think will be kind of fun. And then there's a second project that we're also working on that I'm not going to reveal too much about yet, but um, I see OR as like a platform for other projects. Essentially, what we are trying to do at a very high level is solve the fair launch problem. And if we can solve that with OR, I think we can solve that for many, many other projects in crypto. And so there's a few things left we need to kind of do to, I think, get there with OR. But once we do, um, I think these same tools we can share with the community in a very like symbiotic manner where everyone benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm really looking forward to.
And so just to unpack that a little bit, this game and this fair launch thing are being developed by Regolith Labs, which are sort of a software company you created after founding OR, and so you can work on things related to OR once you freeze the contract at some point. Yeah. Is my so I want to jump into both of those. I think I'll start with the second one, this fair launch idea, because this is, to me, you talk a lot about token distribution, right? That's the point of OR, and a very notable thing that's in the news again and again is airdrops this year, and project after project will carry out an airdrop, and then the community is upset because they feel like they weren't rewarded fairly for their contributions or whatever. They didn't get enough free money. All these sorts of things. The tokens are low float and high FDV. Maybe just like walk me through, like, is there a way in which proof of work could be applied to airdrops to, as an alternative mechanism to the kind of points and then just airdrop tokens trope that's going on currently?
I think so. Yeah, for sure.
What does that look like?
I mean, proof. I mean, we have some ideas. I'm going to save the details for like a later announcement, but like in short, proof of work has been a distribution mechanism for crypto since day one. I mean, it's been the distribution mechanism of Bitcoin. It was the distribution mechanism for Ethereum. Solana and some of these like Gen 3 proof of stake blockchains changed that a little bit, where they've done some VC sales, some validator sales, some public sales, and so on. But proof of work from the beginning has kind of been like the distribution mechanism of crypto. And my only goal is to get proof of work to a point where regular people can participate with a computer out of their home. And if we can do that, then I think we would actually have solved the fair launch problem, because it means that anyone with a computer can press a button, can burn some energy doing computation. They hurts their battery life, but they get this token. That's the sacrifice they're making. They're burning energy to get the token. And as long as we can design a system such that like everyone can participate, everyone with a computer can participate, then I think we reach this world where it's like we can onboard a lot more people to crypto, because like people intuitively understand mining. They just need to like, it needs to be accessible to them. And if we can make it accessible, we can get tokens into the hands of tens or hundreds of millions of people. And that's like benefits everyone across the chain and across the ecosystem. We just get more people involved.
I think it allows you to reopen the question of like what an airdrop is or what it's for. I have covered, airdrop after airdrop, and, I get a lot of the complaints that VCs are probably getting access to better prices than the public or your community or whatever. And that stuff can all be annoying. But at the end of the day, it's like you're being given free money, essentially. And so a lot of the complaints sometimes ring hollow to me. But I do remember, Layer Zero's airdrop. I didn't cover it, but from what I recall, there was something along the lines of you had to donate to like an Ethereum development charity or something. And people were like, what is this? Like, this isn't my airdrop. And the CEO said something to the effect of, it's not free money. Like, you're paying for it by donating to this charity. So looping all this back around, like the proof of work mechanism makes it so that it's not this kind of, hey, please give me a handout dynamic, but you're actually contributing in terms of like paying for the priority fee to land a transaction to mine the token. And so maybe it makes it a little bit more like you actually did some kind of, computational work to receive the airdrop, which maybe cleans up some of that dynamic that can be really grifty or I don't know. There's like something kind of unsavory about the way airdrops go down. So I think I think it's interesting at the very least as a concept.
The other thing I would say here too is that I know there have been some. I mean, I've heard from a few people like the OR FDV. Just to look at that for a moment. Or has a total fixed supply of 21 million tokens, and so at the current market price, that FDV appears absurdly high. For a brand new project, I mean, I'll admit it appears absurdly high. It seems almost silly. That said, I think a token with like a multi-decade long linear release to the community is a very, very different distribution than an airdrop and a 2-year vest to VCs, right? So like FDV there, it means something kind of different, I think, in both those cases. And it's not necessarily apples to apples. Like a 40-year release to the community is very different than a 2-year release to VCs. And yeah.
And this is
so I think those play out a little differently.
When you and I first talked in April, we spoke about how, as part of the Coliseum Accelerator, you get, I don't know, $250,000 investment or something like that from the Coliseum team. And part of the negotiations there were, hey, we're not going to give you an allocation of the token because there's no like pre-mine for investors from the OR token supply, which I thought was cool because I think at times airdrops can feel very much like, founders and investors are getting these huge paydays at the expense of retail who's seeing their token dump. So like maybe walk me through that decision even. Like why did you make the choice not to do any sort of pre-mine of the OR token supply?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a tough negotiation, but I mean, ultimately it was just or launched as a fair launch protocol and a fair launch token. And so I think if I had gone back on my word there, like it would have been, I don't know, very detrimental to the project. And so just because so many people were already bought into the vision of OR being a fair launch proof of work token, I think if we were to go back and say, oh, it's no longer a fair launch, there's this insider allocation, even the VCs who bought into that, it'd be like, well, what are they buying? Because like the trust in that project would have gone to zero, I think. And so ultimately, I think Aura's has like much stronger legs and a way longer, way more upside if we keep it with these Bitcoin type properties of like fair launch, it's proof of work, supply started at zero, every ore has been mined. There wasn't a pre-mine, there wasn't some like pre-minting before mining began and was open to the public. And ultimately we get to the point where the ore contract will be frozen. And when we get there, I think there's a like fairly strong argument to be made that ore will actually be quote unquote like harder than Bitcoin in some ways, because it's I mean, Bitcoin is still changing their source code all the time. Right now they're debating op return and whether or not to add that instruction back into the source code or not. But like a frozen contract on Solana, like there's no update in that. It's frozen. I mean, we have to fork Solana and get all of Solana to fork with us in order to change that, and that's just very unfeasible, I think. So I think or in a lot of ways can kind of take these Bitcoin-y type promises that Bitcoin obviously has pioneered and take them a step further on a chain that actually scales and is highly performant and is willing to increase the block size limit to scale with hardware and with users.
So on the idea of Bitcoininess, if you will,
sure.
A big part of Bitcoin's narrative over the years has evolved from, peer-to-peer payments to digital gold, or like this store of value asset. So do you see Ore in a similar light?
I do have some thoughts there. I mean, what's funny about the Bitcoin gold narrative is, like, from what I understand, that narrative didn't really start until the block size wars, when Bitcoin started facing scaling issues and like fees to move money on the network skyrocketed. And so, it just became much harder to actually use the chain. And then you start seeing this narrative that Bitcoin is a reserve asset that, shouldn't move as frequently, similar to gold. And, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of credit to the idea of a fixed supply token that can't be changed, and does offer dilution guarantees. Like that's actually very, very innovative. And so I do actually support that quite strongly, and definitely my intent with the Ore is to give the Ore token those guarantees as well. Is that's like, if you're holding Ore, there is a cap to the number of tokens that are going to be minted, and we know exactly what that curve looks like to get there. It's 1 Ore per minute linearly, every day and every month and every year. And so we know exactly how many Ore are going to be in circulation a year from now and 10 years from now. And having those guarantees is, I think, like one of the main value adds of crypto. And so I just want to go a step further and say, well, if this contract is frozen, then we know those guarantees can't change. Even if there's some like political debate or community debate amongst the core developers, it's like that contract's frozen. So once it's there, it's immutable, and there's no amount of like hacking or politicking I could do to ever change that, which I think is important.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you can keep the German government from seizing Ore that was used for illicit stuff and dumping it in the market, then yes, you know what the supply is,
Yeah.
So with the idea of airdrops, we've kind of gone into. I want to talk about this game that you mentioned. I guess just to begin, I'm curious: is it a mobile or a like web game?
Well, I haven't started working on the front end yet. I've written the contract. The contract is about 90% done. Needs some play testing. But yeah, I mean, um,
If you had it your way, which one would you go
oh,
with?
both. I think it should be a web app. It should be on mobile. Um, and the most active players will almost certainly write bots. Uh, yeah, like I see the most active players as being sort of like the folks who participate in MEV searching. Um,
So, did the idea to do a game come before you created, or in the months since April, did you kind of come up with this idea?
no, it was definitely in the months after. I saw a project on Twitter called 1 million checkboxes. And what what this guy did, he basically put 1 million checkboxes onto a web page, and and then your web page would be synced with everyone else who was on the site. And so if you clicked a checkbox, it would show as checked for everyone else, and if you unchecked, it would show as unchecked for everyone else. And everyone had full access um, to the board. Anyone could change any checkbox. And this is really interesting engineering problem of like how do you synchronize thousands of clients like as quickly as possible. And so he had a lot of great like blog posts kind of diving into the architecture there. And what just kind of struck me was like there's no gamification around this. It was literally just a board of 1 million checkboxes, and the activity going through that site was enormous. To the point where he eventually had to pause it as well as we did with V1 because it was just like this. I mean, a lot of people really liked it, and it was kind of fun, even though there wasn't really a game to it. But I mean, that just kind of got my gears turning in terms of like, well, if that board, like that mechanic, is keeping people entertained without any gamification at all, like, well, how fun would it be if we did sort of make a game out of it? And yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of the name Check Wars like came um, very out of a dream or something. Like it just kind of yeah, it wrote itself, and then started kind of designing mechanics around like that idea of like could we create a game called Check Wars, and it's maybe like a territory control game, and there's certain benefits for controlling a lot of territory or different ways to attack other players and stuff like that.
So, you come up with the name Checkors.
Yeah.
I guess like what was the sort of like what's your philosophy on building a game? I feel like you were going in that direction with 1 million checkboxes, but what was kind of the thought behind like how would a crypto game actually work and be something people want to play with?
Yeah, I mean, well, you want to take advantage of like the blockchain's native strengths, which in this case are tokens. Um, and I think ultimately, for like a blockchain native game, it just comes down to, in my opinion, like interesting mechanics, as opposed to like fancy graphics or something. Like the game is, as I'm imagining it now, and again, we haven't built the front end yet, but it's just a simple like 2D board game. But there's a lot you can do with a very simple 2D board game, and the yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like we had the name Checkers, and it was we knew I knew like I wanted to make it a territory control game in some way, just based on the board games I enjoyed playing, and I think the blockchain, like Solana in particular, is a really great like substrate or medium to build something like this on, because you can add sort of financial aspects, like you can add risk to the game, like real risk, where like every move has a real cost and there's a real benefit to winning, and then obviously that state is synchronized around the world at like the speed of light, as fast as possible, and yeah, so I don't know. I think it's just like blockchain native gaming just comes down to like using the blockchains, what the blockchain is good for, and designing simple mechanics around that.
Have you played with any of the like Telegram mini apps like Hamster, Combat, or Catizen, or those kinds of things?
Not as much. No.
Well, so you know, to catch you up, it's like it's like tap to earn. So Hamster Combat I've played a bit, and you tap the screen over and over, and it gives you like coins, and you can use the coins to do stuff with your crypto CEO hamster thing. And a lot of people are playing these games out of hopes that there'll be an airdrop, but like it should be said that right now these are the games that are the most played, and it sounds a bit like what you're describing in that it's this sort of arbitrary thing. It's not a very complex game. You're just tapping your screen. I guess, like, having said that, how is what you hope Checkors is like the same or different from sort of these tap to earn Telegram mini games?
Oh, it's like the rules of the game are simple, but the complexity can get quite high. So, like, it's almost maybe the closest thing to think of is like Go. It's kind of like Go in some ways. It's not exactly Go, but like the rules of Go are quite simple, like just trying to surround your opponent. But the board positions that can emerge from just those simple rules can be extremely elaborate. And so likewise, I guess that's why I sort of imagine that if and when we get this game live, it will be the best players will be writing bots. They'll almost be writing like reinforcement learning algorithms because it's a territory control game that's operating at very high speed, and it's like with like some financial risk to make a move. And so I think, yeah, like we're just going to write the rules of the board, and from there, I think like players take it where they will. Yeah, we just want to kind of like lay the foundation of the game, state the rules in as simple a terms as we can, and then I think complexity will naturally emerge from that.
So I want to sort of end off the show with maybe just a little bit about you and being a founder and the journey you've been on. You mentioned that Or went pretty unexpectedly viral. I think more viral than your typical kind of hackathon project would. You've now spun out this software company. You're working on this game and unnamed fair launch project. What's been like something you've learned along the way, or something that's been unexpected as you've kind of gone on this journey of Or for 4 months now?
There's been a lot of things. I think one is just like the amount of community support around Or has been amazing. Like I was not expecting the community to grow as large as it has, and I've been super like grateful for the fact that like all the people are in the like we have so many people in Discord who are active, like contributing their ideas, offering feedback. The moment I land something on GitHub, I get a DM or a tweet or a ping in Discord of someone with feedback. They've seen the PR. Like, people are monitoring that GitHub repo like hawks, and just having that level of feedback, like super tight feedback loops with the community, has been really key, I think, to making like the right decisions in the V1 to V2 transition, and as well as like where we go forward from here. I mean, ultimately, I think I'm the executive, like making these calls as to what goes in the contract and not. But a lot of these ideas came from the community, and I feel I just I'm trying to channel the community's wishes and desires. And so that I think has been number one. And then two is maybe just like managing all of that inbound and all of that communication is like still trying to work out the right systems for it. It's just like a lot of DMs and a lot of emails and Telegram messages and tweets and everything else, and just managing communications at scale with lots and lots of people is a bit tricky. And so if anyone has ideas or tips out there for how to do that, definitely let me know.
Yes, let him know. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Hardhat Chad has to go. I don't know. Make a new update to the OR client or something like that. But it's been a real pleasure. It's been fun to get to hear some of the origin and the things you're working on down the road. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jack. It's been great talking to you today, and yeah, look forward to seeing you in the mines.
Absolutely, you'll see me there. Take care, man.
Yeah, have a good one.